Episode 1, The Fallen Alpha. The night air was heavy with rain and iron. Somewhere beyond the ridge, thunder rolled across the mountains, but it wasn't the storm that had driven the pack to gather in the hollow. It was judgment. I stood at the center of the circle, wrists bound in silver chains that burned into my skin. Dozens of eyes glowed in the darkness, wolves in their half-shifted forms, watching me with a hunger that was not for flesh but for vengeance. Once, they had bowed to me. Once, I had been Alpha. Now I was nothing more than a traitor. Darius Blackthorn, the elder's voice rang out, sharp as the crack of a whip. You stand accused of betrayal. You failed your pack, abandoned your blood oath, and brought ruin to those who trusted you. The words were a knife twisting in my gut. I wanted to speak, to explain, but what good were explanations when no one wanted to hear them? They wanted a villain, and I had been chosen for the role. I forced myself to meet their eyes, wolves I had trained, protected, bled with. I saw only hatred. And behind that hatred, fear. Because the truth was more dangerous than the lie they had chosen to believe. The silver bit deeper as I shifted my weight. The pain was constant, but it anchored me, kept me from giving in to the fury that threatened to consume me. If I shifted, even an inch, the chains would sear straight through my flesh. That was the point. They wanted me powerless. Have you anything to say before sentence is carried out? The elder demanded. I looked past him, past the crowd, to the tree lean where shadows pooled. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw her there, the woman whose face still haunted my nights. A phantom, a memory. But when I blinked, she was gone. No, I said finally, my voice raw. Nothing you would listen to. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some wanted me executed here and now. Others preferred exile. Either way, I would cease to be Alpha. Then by the laws of the pack, the elder declared, you are stripped of your title and cast out. From this day forward, you are no wolf of ours. You are rogue. The word hit harder than any blade. Rogue. It meant exile, abandonment, death by 1,000 hungers. A wolf without a pack was weaker than prey. The chains were unlocked, falling to the mud with a hiss. The crowd stepped back, forming a path that led into the forest. Exile. I turned without a word, forcing my legs to move even as every instinct screamed to fight. To tear them apart for their betrayal. But what would that prove? The storm broke as I crossed the ridge, rain pelting down in sheets. By the time the howls rose behind me, declaring me banished, I was already gone. The rogue life was nothing like the life of an Alpha. Nights bled into days of hunger, of constant movement, of watching the shadows for both hunters and other rogues. Without a pack, even shifting took more from me. Every run left my bones aching, my muscles screaming. But worse than the hunger was the silence. Once, I had felt the constant pulse of the bond, the heartbeat of my pack echoing in my veins, a chorus of voices that told me I was never truly alone. Now that bond was severed. The silence was deafening. I learned quickly which villages to avoid, which roads were patrolled by hunters, and where the shadows were safest. The scar across my shoulder was a reminder of the night I got careless. Hunters had cornered me, silver-tipped arrows tearing into my flesh. I'd barely escaped with my life. Every scar was a lesson. Every step was survival. And still, at night, I dreamed of her. Her face, her voice, the night that had undone me. The night when everything had changed. I told myself those dreams were weakness. That she was gone, like everything else. But some wounds refused to heal. It was near dawn when I first heard the cries. I had taken shelter in the ruins of an old farmhouse, the roof caved in, vines creeping through broken windows. The rain had eased to a drizzle, mist curling low across the fields. At first, I thought it was just the wind. But then it came again, a sharp, desperate cry. Human. I froze. Hunters sometimes use tricks like that, luring rogues into traps. But this sound, it wasn't calculated. It was raw, terrified. Against every instinct, I followed it. Through the mist, I found her. A young woman, cornered against a fallen tree, her clothes torn, blood staining her arm. 3 wolves circled her, their eyes glowing with the madness of rogues. They were lean, half-starved, their movements jerky. She held a knife, her hand trembling, but it was clear she wouldn't last another minute. Something in me snapped. I hadn't saved anyone in months. Hadn't even tried. But as the largest rogue lunged at her, I was already moving. I hit it mid-air, claws tearing through fur and flesh. The other 2 turned on me instantly, their snarls filling the clearing. It was a brutal, savage fight. They weren't skilled, but hunger made them relentless. One sank its teeth into my side before I crushed its skull against the tree. The last went for my throat, but I twisted, feeling its bones break beneath my jaws. When it was over, I stood panting, blood dripping from my body and theirs. The woman was still pressed against the tree, staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. I shifted back slowly, forcing my body into human form despite the pain. "You're safe," I rasped. Her gaze darted between me and the corpses. She didn't move. I raised my hands, palms open. "I won't hurt you." Finally, she whispered, "You're not like them." "No," I said. And for the first time in months, I almost believed it. That night, as the storm rolled on, I carried her to the ruins for shelter. She told me her name was Lyra. She didn't trust me, not yet, but she hadn't run either. I didn't know then that meeting her would be the beginning. The beginning of my redemption. The beginning of the bond that would tear apart everything I thought I knew. Because fate hadn't abandoned me. It was only waiting. And it had found her. Episode 2, A Stranger in the Ruins. The fire was weak, but it was the best I could manage. A few scraps of timber, half-rotten from years of rain, caught slowly, filling the ruined farmhouse with a thin warmth and the smell of smoke. Lyra sat opposite me, knees pulled to her chest, the knife still clutched in her hand. Her dark hair hung damp around her face, strands plastered to her skin. Even in the flickering light, her eyes were sharp, too sharp for someone who had almost died an hour ago. "You shouldn't keep holding that," I said quietly, nodding toward the blade. My voice was rough, half-broken from the shift and the fight. "If I meant to hurt you, you'd already be dead." Her fingers tightened around the hilt. "Maybe. But rogues lie." I almost laughed, but the sound that came out was bitter. "That's true." Silence stretched between us. The storm outside had dulled to a steady drizzle, but the wind still moaned through the cracks in the walls. I tore a strip from my already ruined shirt, pressing it against the wound on my side. Silver hadn't touched me this time, but the bite burned all the same. Lyra's gaze flicked to the injury, and for a second, something like concern crossed her features, then it vanished. "You should clean that," she said at last. "I've had worse." "That's not the point." Her voice was sharper than I expected, carrying an authority that made me pause. Not many dared to give commands to an alpha, even a fallen one. But she said it with such certainty that I found myself reaching for my flask, pouring water over the torn flesh. She watched me, silent again, the knife never lowering. Hours passed. The fire burned low. My eyelids grew heavy, but I refused to close them. Trust was not something rogues could afford, and I didn't know what she was, other than trouble. Finally, she broke the quiet. "Why did you help me?" The question caught me off guard. I glanced at her, at the way she leaned forward slightly, curiosity flickering behind the suspicion in her eyes. "I don't know," I admitted. Maybe I was tired of watching everyone die. Her brow furrowed. That's not much of an answer. No, I said. But it's the truth. She studied me for a long time, as if weighing my words against something only she knew. Then, softly, most rogues don't fight for anyone but themselves. They kill to eat, or they run. But you, her eyes narrowed. You fought like a wolf with something to protect. Her words hit deeper than I cared to admit. Once, I had fought for an entire pack. Now, I fought for nothing but survival. And yet, in that clearing, I had felt something different, like an echo of the alpha I used to be. I didn't answer her. I couldn't. As dawn crept through the cracks, painting the broken walls in pale light, Lyra finally lowered her knife. Not much, just enough to ease the tension that had been strangling the air. She rose to her feet, wincing as her injured arm throbbed. Without thinking, I stood too, steadying her before she could fall. Her body went rigid beneath my touch, but she didn't pull away immediately. You shouldn't go back out there until your arm heals, I said. Her jaw tightened. I don't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. She laughed, low and humorless. Not me. Something in her tone set off every instinct I had. It wasn't just fear or stubbornness, it was resignation. The kind that comes from years of running. I stepped back slowly. Then at least tell me why. Who are you running from? Her eyes flicked to mine, and for the first time, I saw it. The flicker of gold, barely visible in her irises, like embers burning beneath the surface. She noticed my reaction and turned away quickly, pulling her hood over her head. It doesn't matter. You don't want to be part of it. But I had already seen enough. That faint golden glow wasn't human. And it wasn't common among wolves either. It meant bloodlines, ancient, powerful, and dangerous. We set out together, though neither of us admitted we were traveling as a pair. She walked ahead, silent, her cloak pulled tight. I followed a few paces behind, senses sharp for threats. It wasn't long before I noticed the way she moved. Too careful. Too practiced. She wasn't just some lost villager caught by rogues. She knew how to survive in these woods. By midday, she stumbled, her wound reopening. She bit back a sound, but I caught the grimace. Stop, I ordered. I can keep going. You're bleeding through the bandage. She tried to wave me off, but her knees buckled. Without asking, I scooped her into my arms. She struggled, cursing under her breath, but she was weaker than she wanted to admit. Put me down. Not a chance. For a long moment, she glared at me, her lips pressed tight. Then, finally, she slumped against my chest, too exhausted to fight. As I carried her, I felt her heartbeat against mine, steady but strong. Stronger than I expected for someone who had nearly collapsed. That was when I realized, she wasn't just carrying wounds. She was carrying secrets. We found shelter in a cave by the river, hidden behind a curtain of moss. As I laid her down gently, she whispered something I almost didn't catch. You shouldn't stay with me. Why not? Because they'll come for me. They always do. Her eyes fluttered shut before I could press for answers. Sleep took her quickly, leaving me alone with the questions burning in my mind. Who was she? What hunted her? And why, for the first time since my exile, did I feel the faint stirrings of purpose again? I sat at the cave's mouth, watching the river glint in the fading light, the scent of rain heavy in the air. I didn't know what fate had planned. But I knew one thing, Lyra wasn't just a stranger I had saved. She was the key. To what, I had yet to discover. Episode 3, Shadows at the River. The cave was quiet, save for the constant murmur of the river outside. Lyra slept fitfully on the moss I had gathered for her. Her brow twitched with dreams, her lips parting now and then as though she were whispering to ghosts. Every time she stirred, that strange golden flicker lit her eyes before fading back to human brown. I couldn't stop staring. That glow was no accident. No ordinary wolf carried it. My exile had stripped me of much, but knowledge wasn't one of them. I had read enough, fought enough, bled enough to recognize what it meant. Royal blood. The kind of blood that could shift destinies, command packs, and bring ruin if revealed to the wrong ears. And here she was, asleep in a rogue's den. I left her only long enough to bring back water. The river was swollen from the storm, churning white against the rocks. I filled the flask, my reflection distorted in the current. Once, that reflection had meant power. Alpha of the Blackthorn Pack. Now, all I saw was a man hollowed by exile, scarred by betrayal. And yet, carrying her, protecting her, I had felt something I thought I'd lost. Purpose. I returned to the cave and crouched near the fire, watching the flames gutter low. My instincts screamed at me to keep moving, but her injuries made that impossible. We'd risk the night here. That decision nearly killed us. It started with silence. Wolves know the language of the wild, the rustle of prey, the whisper of leaves, the warning cries of birds. When those sounds vanish, danger is close. I rose slowly, nostrils flaring. The night smelled wrong. Smoke. Leather. Blood. Hunters. Before I could rouse her, a shadow slipped past the moss curtain. Not a hunter, worse. Another wolf. Half shifted, claws glinting, eyes dull with madness. Rogue. It snarled low, the sound vibrating in its chest. Behind it, two more appeared, their gaunt frames filling the cave's mouth. Lyra woke with a gasp, eyes flashing gold as she scrambled upright. Stay back, I growled, positioning myself between her and the intruders. My claws slid free, fangs aching in my mouth. The largest rogue lunged first. I met it head-on, our bodies colliding with a crack of bone. Pain flared as its claws raked across my ribs, but I drove my fist into its jaw, feeling the snap. The second circled toward Lyra. She snatched up her knife, but the wolf batted it aside with a snarl. For an instant, I thought she was finished. Then her eyes blazed fully gold. The wolf froze mid-step, its snarl cutting off as if strangled. It staggered, whimpering, before collapsing to the ground, trembling like a pup before its mother. My breath caught. No ordinary wolf could do that. She hadn't touched it. She hadn't even spoken. But the power radiating from her was unmistakable, dominance, pure and primal. The third rogue saw it too and turned to flee, but I caught it before it reached the river, tearing it down in a spray of blood. By the time I turned back, Lyra stood trembling, her glow fading, the subdued wolf bolting into the night. Her chest heaved. She looked at me as though daring me to question what I had just witnessed. I didn't. Not yet. We cleaned the cave as best we could, dragging the bodies into the river to be carried away. The scent of blood lingered, but it was the least of our worries. You should have told me, I said finally, when silence stretched too long. Lyra sat against the wall, clutching her wounded arm, her knife across her knees. She didn't meet my eyes. Told you what? Don't play games. That was no trick. You bent a wolf's will without lifting a hand. Only one bloodline carries that gift. Her silence was answer enough. Royal, I pressed, lowering my voice. You're of the High Moon line. Her gaze snapped to mine then, sharp and dangerous. Say that again, and I'll cut your throat. There was no fear in her threat. Only fury. I raised my hands. I don't care who you are. But others will. Hunters, rogues, even packs. You can't hide that power forever. Her jaw clenched. I've hidden it this long. And how many times have they come for you? Her silence returned, heavier now, weighted with memories she didn't share. The fire died to embers. She leaned her head back against the stone, exhaustion pulling at her features. For the first time, I saw beyond the sharp words and golden eyes. I saw someone tired of running. Someone carrying more than one secret. You don't trust me, I said quietly. No. Good. You shouldn't. I'm not worth trusting. That drew her eyes back to me. For a heartbeat, we just stared at one another, the fallen alpha and the hidden heir, both caught in a fate neither of us wanted. Finally, she spoke, voice barely above a whisper. Then why save me? I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because the truth was, I didn't know. When dawn broke, we left the cave. The river ran beside us, silver in the early light. Lyra walked ahead, cloak pulled tight, every step steady despite her injuries. I followed close, my mind a storm. She was more than a fugitive. More than a survivor. She was the spark of something greater, something dangerous. And whether I liked it or not, I was bound to her now. Because fate had marked her. And by saving her, I had marked myself. Episode 4, The Hunt Begins. The morning air was cold and wet, the kind that sank into your bones and reminded you how small you were beneath the endless gray sky. Lyra walked a few paces ahead, her hood low, her injured arm cradled close to her chest. Every so often, she glanced back, making sure I was still there. Not because she wanted me, but because she didn't trust me enough to turn her back completely. I couldn't blame her. I didn't trust myself either. We moved through the forest in silence, our boots sinking into mud, the storm's aftermath leaving everything slick and treacherous. The river followed us on the left, its current rushing strong, a constant reminder of how easy it would be to disappear in its depths. You're walking too heavy, she said suddenly, her voice low. I arched a brow. Too heavy? You sound like a stag breaking branches. Anyone tracking us would hear you a mile away. My lips twitched. Not used to company, are you? Not used to company that wants to stay alive. Her words stung more than they should have. Still, I adjusted my steps, letting the wolf in me guide my weight, lighter, quieter. Old instincts rose, and I realized it had been a long time since anyone had challenged me to remember them. By midday, we stopped near a ridge to rest. Lyra sat on a fallen log, pulling her cloak tighter. She hadn't spoken much since the cave, but I saw the way her eyes flicked to the trees, scanning constantly. Always waiting for the next threat. You've been running a long time, I said, breaking the silence. Her gaze slid to me, wary. And you've been watching a long time. I notice things. Comes with being an alpha. Her jaw tightened. Ex-alpha. I couldn't help but smirk. Sharp tongue for someone half dead yesterday. She didn't rise to the bait. Instead, she looked past me, toward the tree lean. They're coming. I stiffened, nostrils flaring. At first, all I caught was damp earth and moss. Then it hit me, scents, multiple, moving fast, upwind. Wolves, but not rogues. Their musk carried discipline, unity. Pack. Down, I hissed, pulling her behind the ridge. We crouched low, hidden by brush as the sound of boots and claws drew nearer. A dozen figures moved between the trees, their armor dark leather, their movements precise. Wolves half-shifted, weapons gleaming with silver. Hunters. Pack-trained. My pulse quickened. These weren't rogues scavenging scraps. They were trackers, organized and merciless. And they weren't here for me. They were here for her. The hunters slowed, their leader raising a hand. He was tall, scarred across the jaw, his wolf half-form making his amber eyes gleam like fire. He sniffed the air, lips curling. "She's close." Lyra stiffened beside me. Her golden eyes flashed faintly, but she pressed it down, clutching her hood. The leader continued, voice sharp. "Spread out. She won't slip us again. The High Council wants her alive." The words hit like a blade. I turned toward her, whispering harshly. "Council? What in the hells have you dragged me into?" She shook her head quickly. "Not now." But it was too late. One of the hunters veered toward our ridge, nose lifting, sniffing. My muscles coiled, ready. If they caught our scent, it was over. The wind shifted. His eyes snapped to ours. "Here." I moved before he finished the word. Bursting from the brush, I slammed into him, claws sinking into his chest. His scream echoed through the forest, cut off as I tore him down. "Run!" I shouted at Lyra. The woods erupted in chaos. Hunters lunged from all sides, silver flashing. I shifted halfway, claws ripping, teeth bared. Pain seared across my arm as a blade nicked flesh, but I drove my knee into the attacker's gut, sending him sprawling. Lyra darted between them, her cloak a blur. One hunter tried to grab her, but she twisted, her knife finding his throat. Another lunged, and froze. Her golden eyes flared, dominance slamming into him like a wall. He dropped his weapon, trembling. She didn't kill him. She just pushed past, her control slipping as her knees buckled. I cut down another wolf, blood slick on my claws. The leader charged me, heavier, faster than the rest. His blade caught my shoulder, burning like fire. "You shouldn't have interfered, rogue," he snarled. "This isn't your fight." I growled, meeting his strike with my claws. "She's under my protection now." Our clash shook the ground, sparks of silver and blood flying. His strength rivaled mine, but he fought with something I didn't, orders. Discipline. I fought with rage, raw and reckless. Behind me, Lyra cried out as two hunters cornered her. She dropped her knife, too slow to reach it. I broke free, lunging toward her, but the leader caught me with a strike across the ribs, silver slicing deep. I roared, staggering. And then the world went still. Lyra's eyes blazed brighter than I'd ever seen, pure molten gold, burning like suns. The two hunters pinning her froze mid-strike, weapons raised but trembling violently. Their bodies shook, eyes wide with terror. "Enough," she shouted, her voice layered, echoing with a power not her own. The forest itself seemed to bow. Even the wind stilled. Every hunter faltered, their leader snarling but unable to move forward. His knees bent as though some invisible weight pressed him down. I watched in stunned silence. This wasn't just dominance. It was command. Absolute. Her blood wasn't just royal. It was sovereign. The high moon line, no, more than that. She carried the true heir's mark. Lyra collapsed, the glow fading as quickly as it came. The hunters gasped, freed from her grip, but none dared approach. The leader rose slowly, his eyes locked on her, recognition flashing in his gaze. "So it's true," he said, voice trembling with awe and something darker. "The lost heir lives." My blood ran cold. He knew her. And now, so did I. Episode 5, The Lost Heir. Blood dripped steadily from my ribs as we crashed through the forest, branches whipping our faces. Lyra kept pace despite her injury, her cloak torn, her breath ragged. Behind us, the hunters regrouped, their howls piercing the night. We didn't stop until the trees thickened and the ground dipped into marshland, the stench of stagnant water masking our trail. Finally, Lyra collapsed against a gnarled tree, clutching her side. I staggered to a halt, hand pressed to my wound. The silver cut burned like fire, every heartbeat sending a fresh wave of agony. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was our breathing, harsh and uneven. Then I snapped. "What the hell are you?" Her head jerked up, golden eyes flashing. "I told you not to ask. You nearly bent a dozen trained hunters to their knees with a word. You carry power no wolf should have. And that leader, he called you the lost heir. Explain. Now." She flinched, gaze dropping. For once, her sharp tongue faltered. "I didn't choose this," she whispered. "That's not an answer." Her hands trembled where they clutched her cloak. "Fine. You want the truth? I am of the High Moon bloodline. My mother was the last true Luna of the council. She died in the uprising when I was a child. They told the world her heirs perished with her." Her voice cracked, but she forced herself to continue. "But one survived. Me." I stared at her, disbelief warring with memory. The High Moon line. I'd heard the stories, the rumors whispered even among alphas. That their blood carried the will of the moon itself, the power to command wolves beyond rank, beyond bond. I'd never believed them. Until now. "You're saying you're the rightful heir to the council throne?" Her jaw clenched. "I'm saying I was supposed to be dead. And if they catch me, I will be." Her words hit harder than claws. Suddenly, everything made sense. The hunters, the rogues, the relentless pursuit. They weren't chasing a fugitive. They were hunting a crown. And I had just bound myself to it. The fire between us burned hotter. "You should have told me," I growled. "And you would have what? Sold me to the highest bidder?" I bristled. "I'm not that kind of man." She shot me a sharp look. "You were an alpha once. You know what power does to men. Even you," her gaze flicked to my claws, still bloodied, "don't know if you'd resist it." Her words cut deep because they weren't wrong. I'd lost everything once already, my pack, my name, my purpose. And standing this close to her, I could feel the bond tugging, the instinct to protect, to claim. I hated it. And I needed it. We patched our wounds as best we could. I tore strips from my shirt to bind her arm, ignoring the way her skin burned under my touch. She hissed but didn't pull away. "Why trust me at all?" I asked quietly. Her lips curved in a bitter smile. "Because I had no choice. And maybe, because you didn't leave me behind when you should have." Her honesty startled me more than her power. For the first time, the walls between us cracked, and beneath them, I glimpsed the woman, not just the heir, not just the fugitive. A woman tired of running. Night deepened. We found a hollow beneath the roots of an ancient oak, enough to conceal us for a few hours. The air was damp, but exhaustion forced us down. As she drifted near sleep, I sat watch, the pain in my ribs a constant reminder of our fragility. My thoughts churned. If what she said was true, protecting her meant declaring war against the council itself. It meant every pack, every hunter, every rival alpha would come for us. And yet, when I looked at her, small, fierce, golden-eyed, I knew I wouldn't turn away. Maybe it was madness. Maybe it was fate. Either way, I was bound now. But fate wasn't done with us. Far off, beyond the marsh, a howl rose. Not random. Not feral. A signal. The hunters hadn't retreated. They were circling. Lyra stirred, her eyes snapping open. "They've set a trap." I rose slowly, claws sliding free, my blood singing for battle. "Then we break it," I said, voice low. Because if they thought I'd hand her over, they'd forgotten one thing. I might have lost my title. But I was still an alpha. And no one took what was mine. Episode 6, The Trap Tightens. The marshland was silent, too silent. Even the crickets had gone still. That alone told me enough, something was wrong. Lyra's hand brushed mine, just briefly, and I caught the tremor in her fingers. She felt it too. We moved carefully, the muck sucking at our boots, the air thick with mist. Moonlight filtered through the fog, painting everything silver. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it was a cage. The first sound was a crack, the deliberate snap of a branch. Then another, farther off. Encircling us. They're hurting us, I muttered. Lyra's jaw clenched. Then let's not play livestock. But we had little choice. For every direction we turned, shadows shifted. Wolves moved through the mist, armor gleaming faintly, weapons humming with silver. 12. 2 dozen. Maybe more. The hunters had laid their snare well. We broke into a sprint, but the forest funneled us exactly where they wanted, toward a clearing at the heart of the marsh. Torches ringed the open space, their flames licking upward. And waiting within, the leader from before. He stepped forward, scar catching the firelight, amber eyes cold. Run all you like, little heir. Tonight ends your exile. Lyra stiffened, golden eyes narrowing. I shifted halfway, claws ready. Over my dead body. His lips curled. That can be arranged. They came at once. The clash of steel and claw split the night. I roared, meeting the first with a strike that tore him down, but 3 more filled his place. Silver blades flashed, scoring my flesh, each cut burning like molten lead. Lyra moved like lightning, her knife carving arcs of blood. But she was slower, her wound dragging her pace. 2 hunters closed on her, blades raised. Down, she commanded, her voice like thunder. They froze mid-strike, trembling as if shackled by invisible chains. But her power wasn't clean this time. Her golden eyes flared too bright, her breath ragged. The hunters screamed, clutching their heads as blood trickled from their noses. Lyra! I shouted, fear piercing even the frenzy of battle. Stop, you'll burn yourself out. But she didn't hear me. Her command spilled over, raw and untamed, pressing against my own chest until I staggered under its weight. This wasn't control. It was destruction. I crashed into her, grabbing her shoulders, shaking her. Enough. Her eyes locked on mine, wild, glowing like suns about to implode. For a heartbeat, I thought she'd crush me too. Then, with a shuddering gasp, she collapsed against me, the light fading. The reprieve cost us. Hunters surged, seeing her fall. I fought like a beast, but there were too many, and my strength bled out with every wound. Then the air shifted. A howl cut through the clearing, not the hunters, not ours. Deeper. Older. From the tree lean, shadows burst forth. Wolves, dozens, bearing no insignia, their eyes burning with feral fire. They struck the hunters with savage precision, tearing into their ranks. Chaos exploded. One of them, larger than the rest, shifted mid-leap, landing in human form between us and the hunters. His hair was streaked silver, his chest crisscrossed with scars, but his eyes, pale as winter moons, burned with recognition. Move, he barked, his voice carrying command almost as heavy as Lyra's. I didn't hesitate. Together, we dragged Lyra back as the new wolves ripped into the hunters. Blood sprayed, screams cut short. The clearing became a slaughterhouse. The leader of the hunters snarled, rallying his men, but even he faltered under the sheer ferocity of the newcomers. Finally, he gave the signal to retreat, his voice venomous. This isn't over. The air is ours. The hunters melted into the mist, leaving only corpses and blood behind. Silence returned, broken only by Lyra's uneven breathing. The scarred wolf turned to me, his gaze sharp, assessing, before settling on her. So it's true, he said softly, almost reverently. The lost heir lives. Lyra stirred, barely conscious. Who are you? The man knelt, his voice low. An old oath kept alive. We were sworn to the high moon line, even after they fell. We've waited for this day. Her eyes fluttered, confusion and fear mingling. Why? Why protect me now? He glanced at me, then back at her, his expression grave. Because you're not just an heir. You're the fulfillment of a prophecy. The one who will decide the fate of every wolf, pack and rogue alike. His words hung heavy, colder than the night air. And in that moment, I realized we hadn't escaped the trap at all. We'd stepped into something far bigger. Something inevitable. Episode 7, The Prophecy's Whisper. The night had bled into dawn, pale light filtering through the trees as mist curled around us. The marsh stank of blood and smoke, corpses half sunk in the mud. We followed the scarred stranger and his wolves into the deeper forest, where the canopy grew so thick no sunlight touched the ground. Every step set my instincts on edge, but Lyra leaned heavily on me, too weak to argue. Her golden eyes flickered open just once. Who are they? Not hunters, I muttered, tightening my grip around her waist. But not friends. Not yet. The scarred man glanced back, his pale eyes unreadable. My name is Kale. And we are your oath bound. They led us to an encampment hidden among stone outcroppings, ringed with sharpened stakes. Wolves lounged near fires, their stares sharp and suspicious. None bore sigils of any pack. Rogues, by appearance, but too disciplined, too organized. Kale motioned us inside a tent fashioned from stitched hides. He studied Lyra with a reverence that unsettled me. The lost heir walks in flesh. We feared it was myth. Lyra, pale and exhausted, still found the strength to glare. Stop calling me that. I'm no heir. Kale's lips curved, not in mockery but in something worse, belief. You are more than heir. You are prophecy. Her jaw tightened. Enough riddles. Speak plainly. Kale knelt, drawing a circle in the dirt with one scarred finger. Inside it, he carved the shape of a moon split in two. Long before the council, before alphas ruled packs, the high moon line carried the balance of the bond between wolf and moon. They kept us united. When they fell, the bond fractured. Packs turned on each other. The council rose, but it was built on fear, not unity. He looked up, eyes burning. The prophecy says, when the last heir awakens, the wolf kin shall either kneel as one, or burn as many. The words landed like stones. Lyra shook her head. I didn't ask for this. I never wanted it. Kale's voice softened. Prophecy doesn't ask. It simply is. Her hands clenched into fists. You think I can just stand before the council and unite every pack with a speech? Or worse, be their weapon? I won't. I'm not your savior. Her voice cracked on the last word, and for the first time since I'd met her, I saw her falter, not as the sharp-tongued fugitive, but as a woman crushed by a fate she couldn't escape. I stepped between them, my voice low, dangerous. You've said enough. Kale's gaze shifted to me. And you? Once alpha, now exile. You know what war costs. If she denies this path, there will be no middle ground. Only blood. I bared my teeth. Then I'll drown the world in it before I let you chain her with destiny. Silence thickened. Lyra's breath hitched, her eyes flicking between us. Kale finally rose, dusting his hands. Words are wind. Belief must be tested. He turned to Lyra. There is a relic, hidden deep in the mountains. The stone of Moire. It bears the imprint of the moon's will. If you are truly the heir, it will answer only to you. Lyra stared at him as if he'd grown two heads. And if it doesn't? Then you are free of this burden. No pack, no prophecy, no claim. We will let you vanish. Her lips pressed tight. Hope and fear warred in her gaze. And if it does? I asked. Kale's expression hardened. Then the hunters you faced are nothing compared to what will come. Every alpha, every counselor, every rogue with ambition will hunt her. Because she won't just be the heir. She will be the key to the end, or the rebirth, of our kind. The tent was stifling. I felt the weight of the prophecy pressing on us like a noose. Lyra turned her face away, but I caught the shimmer of tears in her lashes. I touched her shoulder gently. She flinched, then leaned, just barely, into the contact. I don't want this, she whispered. I know, I said. My voice was rough, raw. But you won't face it alone. Her golden eyes lifted to mine, wide and uncertain. Something unspoken passed between us, fragile but fierce. Kale watched silently, then nodded as if confirming something to himself. Rest tonight, he said. Tomorrow, we march to the stone. Later, in the quiet of the tent, Lyra curled on her side, exhaustion dragging her under. I sat awake, staring into the dark. Prophecy. Heir. Unity or destruction. I'd once lost everything because I failed to protect what was mine. Now the stakes were greater than I'd ever imagined. But as I watched her breathe, her hair falling across her face, I swore silently. This time, I would not fail. Even if it meant defying fate itself. Episode 8, The Road to the Stone. Dawn broke gray and bitter. The forest still smelled of blood, though the bodies had been dragged away into shallow graves by Kale's wolves. The silence was heavier now, not of peace but of anticipation. Lyra walked stiffly at my side, her shoulder brushing mine. She hadn't spoken much since Kale's revelation. Her golden eyes were distant, as though replaying the prophecy over and over until it carved wounds deeper than any blade. Kale gave the order, and we moved. His pack fell into a disciplined formation, silent shadows between the trees. Rogues they might appear to be, but their steps were precise, their signals subtle. Soldiers in all but name. I kept my hand close to Lyra's back, steadying her when the marsh turned treacherous. She didn't thank me, but she didn't pull away either. That, for her, was admission enough. By midday, the marsh gave way to rougher ground. The land rose into crags and slopes tangled with roots. A narrow river cut through stone, its waters black and biting cold. We cross here, Kale ordered. The current was fierce, froth breaking on jagged rocks. I tested it with one boot, numbness shot up my leg instantly. This will kill the weak, one wolf muttered. Another sneered toward Lyra. Maybe that's the point. I spun on him, a snarl tearing free. Say that again. The wolf bared his teeth. She brings hunters. She brings prophecy. What has she brought us except danger? Before I could strike, Kale's voice cut through the tension. Enough. She walks under my protection. Any who question it, question me. The wolf fell silent, though his glare lingered. Lyra had gone still, her lips pressed thin. She was used to being the outcast. That didn't make the wound any less sharp. I caught her eye, growled low enough only she could hear. Let them choke on their doubts. You're still here. Her gaze softened, just barely. Crossing was brutal. The current clawed at us, dragging limbs like anchors. Twice I nearly lost Lyra's grip, but she clung to me with surprising strength, teeth gritted against the cold. By the time we hauled ourselves onto the far bank, we were soaked, shivering, but alive. The mountains loomed now, dark giants veiled in clouds. Snow clung to their peaks, the wind carrying the sharp sting of ice. 2 days more, Cale said, his pale eyes narrowing on the ridgeline. If the weather holds. It didn't. By nightfall, snow fell in thin sheets, whispering across the forest floor. We made camp in the shelter of pines, flames flickering weakly against the storm. Lyra sat close to the fire, her wet clothes steaming, her face pale. I offered her my cloak without words. She hesitated, then drew it around her shoulders, the faintest sigh of relief slipping past her lips. For a heartbeat, it was almost peaceful. Then the attack came. The first arrow hissed through the dark, embedding in the dirt by the fire. Then another, and another, raining silver-tipped death. Hunters! Cale roared. Chaos erupted. Wolves leapt to their feet, shifting mid-motion, snarls ripping the night. Figures poured from the trees, armor glinting, blades gleaming. I shoved Lyra down, shielding her with my body as the first hunter charged. My claws met his throat, tearing it open in a spray of hot blood. Lyra scrambled up, knife flashing. Another hunter swung at her, but she caught his wrist, twisting with a snarl that was pure alpha instinct. She should have faltered, she was wounded, exhausted, but something in her ignited. Fall, she commanded, voice ringing like steel. The man dropped to his knees, trembling, his blade clattering into the snow. Her golden eyes blazed, but this time, the power didn't spiral out of control. It bent, focused, sharp as a blade in her grip. Hunter after hunter faltered under her gaze, their attacks breaking, their resolve splintering. I cut them down without mercy. Together, we carved a path through the chaos. When the last body stilled, silence fell heavy, broken only by ragged breaths and the hiss of snow. Lyra stood trembling, her knife still in hand. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, but her eyes, those bright, burning eyes, met mine with something fierce. I controlled it, she whispered, disbelief coloring every word. I stepped closer, cupping her cheek, heedless of the blood on my claws. You did. You're stronger than you think. For a moment, the storm faded. The firelight danced between us, her lips parting, her breath warm against mine. The world narrowed to nothing but her and the bond humming in my veins. Then Cale's voice shattered it. We need to move. More will come. Lyra tore her gaze from mine, wrapping the cloak tighter around her. But her cheeks were flushed, and her hand lingered against mine a heartbeat too long before she pulled away. We marched through the snow, exhaustion weighing heavy. Yet Lyra walked taller, her steps surer. She'd tasted her own strength tonight, and it lit something unshakable inside her. By dawn, the storm cleared, revealing a valley between the peaks. And there, carved into the stone itself, glowed an arch of pale light, moonlight trapped in rock, shimmering like liquid silver. The wolves stopped, breath misting in awe. Cale's voice was hushed. The gate of Moray. Beyond it lies the stone. Lyra's hand found mine, her grip tight. Her voice trembled, but not from fear. Whatever waits beyond, it changes everything. And as I stared into that impossible light, I knew she was right. Episode 9, Through the Moonlit Gate. The gate shimmered like a wound torn into the mountain. Pale silver light pulsed through its arch, spilling over the snow. Wolves shifted uneasily, ears flat, eyes fixed on the glow as if it might swallow them whole. Cale stepped forward first, his scarred face lit ghostly by the light. Only those bound by the prophecy may pass unbroken. Others risk madness, or worse. His words sent a ripple of tension through the pack. Some backed away, muttering under their breath. Lyra's hand tightened around mine. Her golden eyes searched my face, fragile but steady. If you go, I go. I didn't hesitate. Then we go together. We stepped into the light. The world shattered. Cold vanished. Wind ceased. My boots no longer touched snow but something softer, like mist solidified beneath me. Silver fog curled around us, endless and shifting. The air carried a hum, low and constant, like the heartbeat of the moon itself. Stay close, I whispered. Lyra's fingers slipped between mine, clutching tight. Her warmth was the only anchor as the fog thickened, shapes flickering within, shadows that weren't ours. The first whisper rose. Low. Familiar. Traitor. Lyra flinched. The fog thinned before her, revealing a scene etched from memory. A grand hall, filled with wolves in ceremonial robes. At the center, her father, Alpha of the High Moon, his eyes burning with contempt. You shame us, he thundered, voice echoing. Blood sullied by rogues. You are no daughter of mine. The wolves around him sneered, their voices a chorus, betrayer. Disgrace. Rogue. Lyra staggered back, shaking her head. No. Not again. I pulled her close, but she tore from my grip, as if the phantom voices bound her. Tears welled in her golden eyes. They hated me, she whispered. They wanted me gone. And I let them break me. The vision sharpened, her father raised his hand, as if to strike. Something in me snapped. I lunged forward, but my claws passed through him like smoke. My rage meant nothing here. Lyra trembled, clutching her head. I'm not her anymore. I won't be. Her eyes blazed, golden light slicing through the fog. The phantom wolves screamed, tearing apart into wisps. The hall collapsed into nothingness. She fell to her knees, gasping. I knelt beside her, gripping her shoulders. They don't define you. Not then. Not now. You're still standing, Lyra. That's more than they ever expected. Her eyes met mine, wet but fierce. A fragile smile tugged at her lips. You always say the right thing. Not always, I murmured. But I'll always say it for you. The fog shifted again, this time, around me. A field soaked in blood stretched before us. Wolves lay broken, lifeless. And there I was, another me, standing powerless as flames consumed everything I once swore to protect. My heart slammed against my ribs. No. The phantom Darius dropped to his knees, hands slick with blood, his eyes hollow. You failed them, the whisper coiled in my ear. Your pack. Your family. You will fail her too. The bodies stirred. My brother's face turned up at me, torn and bloody. Why weren't you there? My hands shook. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The guilt I carried every day rose like chains. Then, warmth. Lyra's hand on mine, grounding me. Look at me, she said fiercely. That's not you. Not anymore. Her eyes burned, golden fire piercing the illusion. You can't change the past. But you're here now. With me. That's what matters. Her voice cut through the fog like a blade. The phantom battlefield trembled, then shattered, dissolving into mist. I collapsed forward, catching my breath. She held me, arms firm, unyielding. For the first time, the chains eased. Together, we rose. The fog recoiled, opening a path. At its end, a glow brighter than any moonlight pulsed, steady and rhythmic. Kale's voice drifted on the mist, though he wasn't there. The stone awaits. It will know the truth of her blood. But beware, Once touched, the bond of destiny cannot be undone. Lyra's grip tightened. And if I don't? The whispering fog answered, voices many and one. Then the world burns. Her breath hitched, fear flickering across her face. But she straightened, shoulders squared. Then let it test me, she said, voice steady. And may the moon decide. The path opened wider, silver flames licking at the edges. I stayed at her side, heart pounding with a promise unspoken. Whatever destiny demanded, I would not let it take her alone. Episode 10, The Stone of Moray. The path ended in silence. No more whispers, no more illusions, only the glow ahead, steady and alive. We stepped from the fog, and there it was. The Stone of Moray. It stood taller than any wolf, a monolith of obsidian carved smooth by hands long forgotten. Veins of silver ran through its surface, pulsing like veins beneath flesh. Moonlight poured down, striking the stone, and the veins flared, bright, alive, breathing. Around it lay a circle of ancient runes etched into the earth, each glowing faintly, their language older than any I had studied. Lyra's breath caught. It's beautiful. Beautiful, yes, but wrong. The air here vibrated, thick with power so raw it nearly drove me to my knees. Every instinct screamed submit, yet something in me raged against it. The stone wasn't merely alive. It was watching. We crossed into the circle, and the air shifted. The runes flared, closing us in. A voice rose, not spoken, but felt. It was the weight of centuries, the echo of every alpha before us. Daughter of High Moon. Blood of betrayal. Heir of destiny. Step forward. Lyra's hand slipped from mine. She looked back at me, fear flickering in her eyes. Her throat bobbed. I don't know if I can. You can, I said, steady. And I'll be here. But the stone's glow sharpened, and the voice thundered. Alone. The runes between us ignited, forcing me back. I snarled, but the barrier held, burning my skin when I tried to break it. Darius. Lyra cried. I'm not leaving you. I slammed my claws into the invisible wall, sparks flying. The stone did not yield. Lyra stepped forward. The glow wrapped around her, silver threads weaving across her skin, marking her like tattoos of light. Her golden eyes widened as the world shifted. From my side of the barrier, I saw only fragments, shadows, visions playing across her face. She stood in a hall of fire. Wolves screamed, their bodies breaking under Hunter's silver. Blood stained the walls, the floor, the air. And at the center, her child. Small, fragile, crying out for her. Save him, a voice whispered. Take him. Run. Let the world burn if you must. Lyra staggered, clutching her chest. Tears welled in her eyes as she reached for the phantom child. But another vision cut through. Her people, wolves she barely knew, faces of a pack that once cast her out, stood cornered. Their eyes begged her, not with scorn but with desperation. Save us, they cried. Or we all die. Her knees buckled. Two choices, impossible, merciless. Her arms trembled as she reached for her son, then froze, torn in half. Her voice cracked. No, please, don't make me choose. The stone's voice rumbled, unyielding. One life for many. One sacrifice for destiny. Choose. I slammed against the barrier, my roar shaking the chamber. Don't listen. Lyra, you're more than their games. You can be both. Her gaze darted to me. Her lips parted, trembling. Both? Both, I swore, claws bleeding against the wall. You've carried yourself and your son through exile, through betrayal. You can carry them too. Don't let a dead stone tell you who you are. Her golden eyes blazed. She rose, trembling but defiant. She held out both arms, one toward the child, one toward the people. I won't abandon him, she said, voice steady. And I won't let them burn. Silver light surged from her chest, a pulse so strong it rattled the runes. The illusions shattered like glass, the hall collapsing into nothing. The stone roared, cracks racing across its surface. Moonlight bled brighter, flooding the chamber. Lyra screamed as the light consumed her, her body lifting from the ground. Threads of silver wrapped her tighter, embedding into her skin like chains, or wings. Lyra! I howled, battering the barrier until bone cracked. The last thing I saw was her eyes, burning gold, glowing brighter than the moon itself, before the light swallowed her whole.